Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast, talking about the Matthew Stafford situation, which is now resolved. It feels like it's gone on for like months, but it's really not that long. Maybe 4 or 5 weeks. But so anyway, Stafford will stay with the Rams. I always felt it was the most likely, and it made the most sense. I mean, they honestly gave Philly the best game. Like, the Chiefs obviously no, the Commanders no. The Packers game was weird. I actually thought the Packers had a chance. They fumbled on the opening kickoff. So, I think if you play that game out 10 times, the Packers might win 3 out of 10. But, so Stafford, as he should, stays in L.A. He was only due to make, a base salary of $27 million next year. They'll have to bump that up. But whatever they did yesterday at that meeting, they resolved it. Stafford stays with the Rams. And ever since then, the Giants' attention apparently has gone to Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers is a guy that I just made a video about a couple weeks ago, so I was kind of deep diving into him, reading quotes about him as a teammate with the Jets and going back and watching him from last year. I came away more intrigued with Rodgers than I thought I would be. Now, those who know me, I've always been an Aaron Rodgers fan, so that's I'm not trying to sound biased, but he does have a lot left in his arm. I said in my video, it does not remind me of the late career Eli Manning. It does not remind me of the late career Matt Ryan. It does not remind me of late career Roethlisberger or Kirk Cousins last year. What I saw from Rodgers is the guy still has a live arm, a very live arm. And I think if you give him protection, there's a chance it works out. Now, I know there's distractions, Pat McAfee show, conspiracies and going on vacation during training camp or mandatory training camp and whatnot. Or no, I think it was OTAs, whatever. But I think Aaron Rodgers might be the best and lowest risk option for the Giants in 2025. Now, of course, there is Russell Wilson. I think I would prefer Rodgers over Wilson at this point, just based on skill. But I don't see getting Rodgers as this doomsday scenario. I don't look at it like that. I think he's already said with the Jets that he'd be fine mentoring somebody. So if they were to sign Rodgers for 1 year and hopefully not too much money, which I don't think it would be that much anyway. So they would sign Rodgers. You would still have a chance to draft hopefully Cam Ward or even Shedeur Sanders. A Rodgers and Sanders quarterback room would draw a ton of media. I don't know if that would actually work, but it's possible. You can pull that off. And of course, you had people, I saw Jordan Ronan say this, that the Giants also have some attention on Sam Darnold. The Giants apparently had interest in Darnold last offseason before he went to Minnesota, but he was too expensive for what they were looking for. Of course, they end up siding with Drew Lock, and we know how that went. He had that one amazing game versus the Colts. The rest of it, not so good. The Darnold thing is concerning to me. It really has Daniel Jones written all over it. Now, I don't think Darnold's as bad as Daniel Jones. I don't want to put that on him. But giving Sam Darnold a 4-year, I don't want to say $200 million, but just giving Darnold a long-term commitment, which maybe it's not. Maybe Sam Darnold's market's not great and he ends up making 2 years for, I don't know, $60 million, probably more, 2 years, $80 million or something. Maybe it's like that and that's more palatable. But if he wants Sam Darnold a 3 or 4 year deal, I really have no interest. I just don't see that ending well. It worked last year in Minnesota where you have Kevin O'Connell who can probably make anything work with any quarterback. I saw games with him and Nick Mullins, and Nick Mullins looked good in those games. It's you have the coach in place, and I think Dable's pretty good with quarterbacks for the most part, but Kevin O'Connell's one of the best. And then you had Jefferson, you had Hawkinson, Addison, you had a solid running game. When Darisaw plays at left tackle, a good offensive line. Of course, he was out for second half of last year, which I think really derailed the Viking season. But getting Sam Darnold, if you're the Giants, it feels like it's not going to end well. I just don't see how it goes well at all, and I think if they were to sign him for 3 or 4 years, they would realize after year one or maybe even halfway through year one that, oh, this is not worth it. We should not have done this. And then you have to cut him and you take on dead money for the next couple years. It's just not worth it. I don't want to get into that. So if I'm going down swinging, I'm going down with a 1-year deal for Rodgers or even Russell Wilson for 1 year. Now, I've heard things about Russell Wilson that I don't want to say he's tough to get along with, but apparently Russell Wilson, he likes things done his way. There's certain accommodations that he needs when he's the quarterback of your team, and I think some people in Pittsburgh didn't necessarily love that, which is why it seems like the Steelers now are more focused on bringing back Justin Fields rather than Russell Wilson. I'm not going to say Fields is the Steelers' plan to be the quarterback one, but I think they are interested in bringing back Fields to stay on that roster. For Russell Wilson, there was, he was more of a pain in the ass, I guess I could just say it bluntly. With Aaron Rodgers, though, I really do think the public perception of him is way worse than it actually is. And, I said this on Twitter yesterday. I always end up defending guys who just have like a bad media reputation, whether it be Kyrie Irving, whether it be Aaron Rodgers, whether it be Odell Beckham, whether it be Shedeur Sanders. Like, I always tend to kind of be in their corner, and I like to defend those guys because I really do think for all four of them that I just listed, the perception of them is just, it's too far off. Like, I don't think they're bad teammates, any of them. I don't think like they're a distraction. I think ultimately like those guys are good at what they do. They're good players, basketball, football, they're good at what they do. They're good teammates, hardworking people. Like, I don't look at those guys and say, oh, they're cancers, they're bad for the locker room, bad teammate. I don't look at it like that. I really don't. So like maybe I'm wrong, but Connor Hughes had a tweet that kind of backed up my thoughts about him. So Connor said yesterday on X, I guess we call it, the Giants and members of their coaching staff have touched base with former members of the Jets coaching staff to discuss working with Rodgers the last 2 years. They received rave reviews. Public perception of Aaron Rodgers, the person, teammate, very different from those who worked with him. So it kind of backs up what I'm saying. And, Aaron Rodgers in 2023, when he played 4 snaps and, of course, tore his Achilles, he was voted by his Jets teammates as, like, the best teammate, the most inspirational teammate, I believe the actual award was called. And the guy played 4 snaps, right? So I really don't think Aaron Rodgers is a bad teammate. I've heard good reviews from Robert Saleh, CJ Mosley, Dwayne Brown, like just guys that are coaches, veterans, been around for a long time in Mosley and Brown's case. And yeah, I know this is not prime Rodgers, I get it, but even last year he had a 63 completion percentage, 3,900 passing yards, let's call it, 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Like, that would be the best Giants quarterback season in a long time. I'm thinking, like, who's the last guy to put up numbers even close to that? Was it like, well, we have 2015 Eli. I mean, so Eli, it's tough to compare Daniel Jones' 2022 to what Rodgers did because Rodgers, of course, has like no rushing attempts or anything, so it's a tough comparison. But point is, it would be an upgrade as compared to what the Giants have had the past few years. And honestly, I think, not to throw shade at the Jets, but I think the Giants situation is better than what the Jets had. The Jets had, ever since Saleh left, they had like the worst coaching in football. All right, I saw a stat that the Jets defense was ranked like top 5 in some important category. I don't know if it was like DVOA or something, and then when Saleh left, they were like bottom 5 in the league. So it's like the impact of losing Saleh for the defensive side was big. The offensive coaches for the Jets, I mean, they were not anything special. So if he came to New York with Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka, who's now been in the coaching cycle the past 2 or 3 years, I think that's a big coaching upgrade. And if Andrew Thomas plays, you would have a healthy offensive line that the first half of the year was playing really well. So Rodgers would have a better offensive line than what he had with the Jets. The weapons would kind of be the same because I'm thinking like Garrett Wilson, Malik Neighbors, similar-ish, right, receivers, so you have that. He would probably bring Devontae Adams with him, so you're going to have Neighbors and Adams, pretty similar to the same thing as Adams and Wilson, but beyond that, Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy, of course, I would take Breece Hall over Tracy, so like maybe the Jets have a slight edge in the weapons and whatnot, but if the Giants even were to re-sign a Darius Slayton, that can really help things there. Like maybe instead of bringing Alan Lazard over, the Giants just re-sign Darius Slayton, who I think is a bit better than Alan Lazard. But then again, it's a Rodgers preference thing. Like, I do think if the Giants are going to go about this in the way I think they do, they're going to have to set some groundwork with Rodgers to be like, this is not your team. You're not running the show. You can't come in here and bring in Nathaniel Hackett and 5 former Packers teammates. You have to kind of play by our rules. And if Rodgers wants to comply and stay here for 1 year with the Giants, then great. If not, then he'll probably just go somewhere else or just retire. So it seems like the league interest for Rodgers is not too high, which I mentioned that in my video, and I guess I was wrong because I thought there would be more interest in Rodgers. I thought teams like the Steelers, the Raiders, Tennessee, like I thought teams like that would be interested. But based on what I've heard and what I've seen on Twitter and whatnot, it seems like the want for Rodgers is not really out there. And I don't necessarily understand it. I kind of get it, but I figure more teams like Tennessee. If you're Tennessee and you're not taking a quarterback this year, why not take Rodgers? Like I get it. He's 41, but Rodgers, as I said in my video, has spoken highly of Tennessee and that area, and I just think like they have a pretty good quarterback coach. I mean, that's what Brian Callahan was, he was hired to do, was to help the quarterback position. Of course, he worked with Joe Burrow back in Cincinnati. And then, of course, moving now to the draft, there's the possibility of the Giants trading from 3 to 1 if Tennessee does not want a quarterback. And I don't really know what they're going to do, but if I'm Tennessee, if I'm in their shoes, I'm Mike Borgonzi. I'm really not. My last name's not Borgonzi, but just trust me here. So I'm Mike Borgonzi. I don't want Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. This is not the quarterback class for me. If I'm him, I'm looking at it like I can trade back 2 spots. Yes, I may lose out on Carter or Hunter, who may go to Cleveland at that point, right? So if I trade with the Giants jump up to 1. The Giants I think they would take Cam Ward, but maybe they really do like Shedeur. I think that's kind of a smokescreen type of thing. I don't think the Giants are obsessed with Shedeur Sanders. It kind of feels like J.J. McCarthy last year, where you saw all these reports like, oh, the Giants went to Ann Arbor to meet up with JJ on Easter. Like I think that stuff was, they probably actually did it, but it was just like a smokescreen. So I kind of get the same vibe. Like I don't think the Giants love Shedeur Sanders. I think Cam Ward is going to be their guy. So let's say if you're Tennessee, you trade back with the Giants. Cam Ward goes first overall to the Giants. Second overall pick with Cleveland, I mentioned Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. One of those guys goes, but whichever one Cleveland doesn't take, you get that guy at 3 plus extra draft capital. So it's like that would make a lot of sense for Tennessee to end up with Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter and get an extra. I don't know what the cost would be to move up from 3 to 1. I don't think it would be crazy, but it might be, right? I could see it being an extra first-round pick next year and a third-round pick for this year, or I could just see it being like a third-round pick this year. Like, I don't know where it would be. I'm not looking at the whole trade chart thing. I'm kind of just spitballing here. I saw this tweet from Chad Forbes. Of course, he covers the draft, but it seems more opinionated, but it kind of makes sense. So he says, all of the quarterback options out there for the Giants leave you realizing Cam Ward, quarterback Miami, is worth trading up in the draft. Dable's job hinges on getting a young quarterback in the building. He'll hitch his wagon to Shedeur Sanders if Cam Ward is off the board. The gap between the two prospects is massive. I don't view it as massive, but I do prefer Cam Ward. I've kind of landed on that. Like I think Cam Ward there's just more there. I think there's a better chance Cam Ward turns into a top 10 quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I'm one of those people that if the Giants were to take Sanders, I'm not gonna like be mad at it. I'm not gonna be super happy. I'm not gonna be jumping out of my chair, but if the Giants drafted Sanders at 3, I'd be all right with it. I think he's the right personality for what they need. The Giants always have, and I saw someone tweet this last night, but the Giants always have guys that are just boring in the media. They go, team played well, we got to execute better, that type of shit. But with Shedeur Sanders, you're getting a whole different character. You're getting a guy who is brutally honest, but brings a certain swagger that the Giants quarterback position just has not had in my lifetime and probably ever. So I think that would bring some life to this team that they need. But ultimately, just as players, I feel more confident taking a shot on Cam Ward. I think his arm is way more alive. I think the ceiling's higher. So I would take Cam Ward. Of course, I have some concerns because Cam Ward's offensive line was crazy. It kind of gives you Zach Wilson flashbacks, how Zach Wilson's offensive line was great. And then you get to the NFL, things are not as easy. Guys are faster. And it's like, oh shit, this is not what I thought, So obviously Zach Wilson did not work out. And maybe he will one day, but I'm not counting on that. But for some guys, the transition's tougher than others. And I think, honestly, I think the transition for Cam Ward to the NFL will be tougher than Shedeur Sanders because Shedeur Sanders had a ton of games in Colorado where the offensive line sucked. He had to kind of be the best player on the field. I mean, Travis Hunter, of course, but like he had to make plays on his own and do things on his own and get out the pocket and reset his feet and make throws. Like Cam Ward, yeah, he's done that, of course, but just not to the same level that Shedeur Sanders did. Shedeur Sanders would just go into games and not get much help from the five guys in front of him and kind of have to do things on his own. And I think that will translate better to the NFL because Shedeur Sanders has more experience. I think Cam Ward, I respect his game, of course, but Cam Ward was, I don't want to say he was more coddled, but things were easier for him. The environment was much better. So I think the transition for Cam Ward will be a bit tougher than Shedeur Sanders because he's already faced a lot of adversity with the bad offensive line and having to make plays on his own. So we'll see. Of course, it's never as easy in the NFL as it is in college, and everybody develops differently, but I would feel more confident with Shedeur Sanders as a day one starter than Cam Ward. It might be a bad take, but that's how I feel. The only thing that would really piss me off is if they, well, I don't want to say it would really piss me off. I don't think I would really be too mad at it, but it also wouldn't make sense. And I saw Bobby Skinner tweet this yesterday, and it does make a lot of sense. So the Giants pushed really hard for Matthew Stafford, right? They miss out on him. I think it's a blessing in disguise, but people will disagree. But then if the Giants, who tried very hard for Stafford, the 37-year-old veteran, they did not get him. If they were to trade up for a quarterback in the draft now, it almost just reeks of desperation. Not almost, it does. So that part is concerning to me because you have, of course, a GM who, let's be honest, he's on the hot seat, Joe Shane. He has to win this year. And if your first instinct was to trade for Stafford and then you pivot to trading up for a quarterback in the draft, did you really love that quarterback in the draft in the first place? It really makes you kind of think about, is he doing this because he loves this draft prospect, or is he doing it because he just wants to try and save his job? That's a concerning part for me. So here's what Bobby said yesterday on February 28th. It's weird because it's wait, that was yesterday because it's a very short month. Anyway, so Bobby said on Twitter, Bobby Skinner, all right, the GM that just went in to get Matthew Stafford is now going to trade up for a quarterback. Either all the trade up stuff is bullshit or the Giants are throwing Hail Marys. Appreciate John Mara for unnecessarily creating this, which that line's funny because it's true. Then he quote tweeted saying, "We know for a fact the Giants made a real push to trade and pay for Matthew Stafford. You can't sell me that you have conviction on any of these quarterbacks to trade up for them now." And yeah, he's right. I mean, if you had conviction in these quarterbacks, if you really thought Cam Ward was that guy, would you really be going out of your way to trade up and pay Matthew Stafford? Not trade up, but trade for Matthew Stafford and pay him over $100 million? That doesn't really add up. So yeah, it's concerning. I think Joe Shane is operating out of desperation, and that was the issue with bringing him back. I think a lot of the fan base was united on that, which is rare. I think I would say 95% of Giants fans, or maybe 90, were yeah, let's not bring Joe Shane back because he'll be desperate. And yeah, he's always said you can't shop hungry, but he'll be shopping hungry this offseason, that's for sure. To circle back though, I just never thought that Stafford made sense for the Giants. I mean, Stafford for the past 2 or 3 years now has been I don't want to say contemplating retirement. I mean, he kind of was this year, but he announced pretty early in the process that he'll be back for next year, or he'll think he'll be back for next year, which he will now. So if you're having a guy who's kind of playing with retirement year to year, do I really want to trade up for that? I keep saying trade up, but do you really want to trade assets for that? I don't think I could do it. I think that would just be an awful move. It's just very short-sighted. You're doing it for 1 year, and yeah, maybe that does save Shane's job for another year if Stafford came in here and had a 9 or 10 win season somehow and they made the playoffs. Maybe that does save his job for another year. But then, all right, let's say Stafford retired after next year. Then what do you do? I mean, you're kind of screwed at that point. You have a low draft pick, and I don't know what the free agent class looks like in next summer. I don't know. It's just, it never seemed to make any sense. Yeah, it would have been cool to have Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Malik Neighbors, but, and I love Stafford. I do. Stafford's my favorite, Aaron Rodgers is my favorite pocket passing quarterback to watch in my lifetime, but Stafford's number 2. He's up there. I love Stafford. The rocket arm, the way he maneuvers the pocket, I just, the sidearm throwing, I love that. The no-look passing, it's very fun to watch. It just never made sense for the Giants. Never did. I think if you threw Stafford on the Giants last season, instead of getting, what, they have 3 wins last year? So instead of 3 wins, do you end up with 7? Maybe 8 at the highest point? Like, you're still missing the playoffs. I just don't really get it. I know last year was a very bad year for the Giants, and yeah, a lot of games were one-score games, as Joe Shane loves to say, but I don't know. I just don't think this team was ready for it. There are teams where it makes sense to go in and get a quarterback who have good rosters. This is what I know it failed miserably, but this is what the Broncos did with Russell Wilson 3 years ago. It's like, oh, we have a good roster everywhere, but we don't have a quarterback. Our quarterback is, it was Drew Lock at that point, but like, that made sense. You have a roster that's good enough to win. It failed miserably once again, but that made sense. The Giants don't really have that. So my personal favorite outcome through all this is that the Giants sign Aaron Rodgers for 1 year. I really hope it's not a lot of money. I think he should give them a discount. I'm not trying to, I always say pocket watch. I don't want to pocket watch. If you're Rodgers, like, don't you want to try and build a team around you that can win? This is most likely your last year. You'll be turning 42 in December. You should probably try to just take a low amount of money, 1 year, maybe $15-20 million, and the Giants can build the team around you that actually has a chance to do something. Because I don't think Rodgers wants to go out and have 4 wins next year and go out sad. I just don't see him wanting to come back and have that be the way he leaves the NFL. I think if you're Rodgers, you come here, you take a pay cut. Then it leaves an interesting question at the draft. If you were to sign Rodgers to this 1 year cheap deal, then what do you do at 3? Are you drafting Carter or Hunter to try and get the most wins possible for 2025? Or are you signing Rodgers, making him a bridge quarterback mentor for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? That's the real question. For me, I'm going to draft a quarterback route. I'm going with preferably Cam Ward, and if not, I'm fine with Shedeur Sanders at 3. Because here's the thing, like, yes, you can sign Rodgers to the 1 year deal. You can, let's say, draft Travis Hunter at 3. What are the actual chances that the Giants go out and win the Super Bowl next year with 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers and a team that just won 3 games last year? Very unlikely. Yeah, it sounds good on paper. Yeah, Rodgers at quarterback 1. You have Travis Hunter at cornerback / wide receiver, I think more cornerback. Or Rodgers and Abdul Carter and Brian Burns, Kayvon. Yeah, that sounds cool. But we know Joe Shane's a guy who drafts for need, so I don't think he would draft Carter. I mean, it's possible, but I think he would be more of a Travis Hunter guy. So yeah, it sounds cool on paper to have Rodgers quarterback 1 and have Carter or have Travis Hunter. You have to think about what's the most likely outcome. That team's not winning a Super Bowl. I think Rodgers at best case gets you to maybe 9 wins. Like, that would be a great improvement from last year, and it might get you that last wild card spot, but that team's not winning the Super Bowl. I think your best chance at building something for a Super Bowl is to draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders and hope that works out. I think there's a better chance that works out in the future, because I'd rather play for the next 2 to 8 years of Cam Ward rather than focus on just 1 year of Aaron Rodgers, if that makes sense. And once again, this is not 30-year-old Aaron Rodgers. This is 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, going to be 42. So take that in consideration. Rodgers definitely played through a few injuries last year. He had that one play overseas where, I think it was the London game, where he was crawling like he needed to be revived in Fortnite. Like, it looked bad. So, like, there were a few times where it's like, oh, this guy's season's over, but then he always came back somehow. But he was definitely playing through things. For free agency, I don't know if I'll make a video about it, like a preview, but I think we'll just talk about it here since I'm already on the mic, so why not? But Trey Smith got franchised by the Chiefs. That makes sense. I saw Lorik Jackson got signed by the Rams yesterday. I don't even know if he was a free agent. He might have been. Of course, for the Giants, your biggest need is quarterback, but you have other needs as well. If Darius Slayton leaves, you might need like a wide receiver 3 type of guy. They could use a right guard if Greg Van Roten does not return next year. Definitely can use some defensive tackles. And, of course, outside corners. Corners is a big thing. And maybe if you're not going to re-sign Pinnock, then maybe you need a free safety as well. I saw the idea of Javon Holland. I do like that. Holland's a really good player, but, like, I don't know if that makes sense throwing a ton of money at him. I've seen the ideas of BJ Hill, Osa Odighizuwa for defensive tackle. I would like both of those. I think that'd be nice. Obviously, they won't sign both those guys, but I think getting one of those would make a lot of sense because after Dexter Lawrence, like, yeah, Raheem Nunez Roches, he has his moments, but not a guy that I think makes enough of impact plays. And honestly, I think BJ Hill and Osa Odighizuwa are better players. I've seen the idea of, like, there's these 3 corners out there, Carlton Davis, Javarius Ward, DJ Reed, and like those guys make a lot of sense. Byron Murphy even. DJ Reed probably makes the most sense because he already played with the Jets, but I don't know what the best scheme fit for those guys would be. I know Carlton Davis is more of a man-to-man corner, so I don't know if he makes sense from a schematical standpoint. And Javon Holland's actually he's going to turn 25 on March 3rd, so happy early birthday. But yeah, he's super young. I mean, I could see it. He had a really good second year. He's battled some injuries the past couple of years, just like little nagging injuries. He played 12 games in 23, played 15 games last year, but that's a guy I would take a shot on. He's better than Pinnock, so I think that would make sense. It depends what the cost is, obviously. They did not want to go out and spend the money for McKinney last year. But if I could replace Holland with Pinnock, I would do that. For guard, I see Kevin Zeitler's out there. Maybe throw him back at right guard. That'd be funny. Mekhi Becton's out there. I don't love that. I feel like Becton, too injury prone for me. He's older, but Brandon Sheriff, he's out there. He's definitely not the same guy he once was. I saw Will Fries is out there. He's interesting. Like, he had a slow start to his career, but he was playing very well last year until I think he broke his leg. So maybe that's a guy. I mean, the Giants have already signed the right guard from the Colts, Mark Lewinsky. That didn't go too well, but maybe this time with Will Fries, that works out. I see Asante Samuel Jr.'s out there, but he's like a press man type of guy. I do like him a lot as a player, but if like Shane Bowen's your defensive coordinator, then it doesn't really make sense. So there are good free agents out here. I'm going down the list. I see good names out here. Even like Levi Muzarike from the Lions, like, that's a good guy to buy low on. He's talented. He's missed a lot of games. I think he had a back injury. He didn't play in 2022 with a back injury, so that's concerning, but that's still a good guy to like take a shot on for defensive tackle depth. I've always liked Paulson Adebo at corner. I remember watching Adebo in college, and I was like just instantly fell in love with that guy. So Adebo, he had a slow start with the Saints. Like, the first couple of years were rough, but he really turned his career around the last couple of years. So Adebo's definitely an option at corner. Back on the outside. NFL.com ranks Darius Slayton at 44 and Azeez Ojulari at 46 for free agent rankings. That's interesting. This is another guy I just cannot quit on, Elijah Moore, the former Jet. He was with Cleveland the past, I think, 2.5 years. I was such a big Elijah Moore fan out of Ole Miss, and he's had flashes, especially when Jameis was playing at quarterback. Like, he had a few really nice games. I would replace Slayton with him in a heartbeat. I'm not saying that Moore's a better player now, but I think that potential's there. So Elijah Moore I would definitely be open to. Daniel Jones at number 84 on the list. All right, interesting. I'd probably have him at like 284. Even Josh Palmer. I like Josh Palmer, Chargers wide receiver. He's had some nice games. He's had to fill in at times, and when he filled in for Mike Williams, he was good with the Chargers, so I think that's an option. I wonder if the Giants will bring in a backup running back. I don't think so because they have Singletary under contract, but I was kind of underwhelmed by Singletary, so I guess they'll keep him and Tracy as the duo. So we'll see. I'm trying to think, when does free agency start here? Free agency officially opens March 12th at 4 p.m. So I guess maybe a couple days before we'll start getting the announcements. That's going to be fun. So yeah, that's like 10, 12 days away. So we're getting there. I'll have my reactions if the Giants make some big signings. We'll see if they do sign Holland or somebody outside corners, maybe. We'll see. So that'll do it. We talked about the Stafford situation, quarterback stuff as a whole, Aaron Rodgers, which I'm not against it. I'm really not. I would be fine with it. Aaron Rodgers trading up for Cam Ward with the Titans pick, some free agents at the end. So yeah, we covered a lot here, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Of course, leave a like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys next time.